Right. Good morning. Happy Friday. Happy Red Friday. We are very, very nice and red today, with sellers being the ones the only ones I would say who won party today. We did take an ETH trade yesterday. It's pretty close to open. After this yellow box closed below, we did attempt shorts with a hold below 67.64.75. We ended up wicking above it to get ourselves stopped out. Um, we did end up going to my full TPs, but we were pretty messy on the read. Levels didn't play perfectly yesterday. We were looking at um, there was our wave one daily vector was at around 68.64.75, and the rest of our vector cluster was around like 67.61 to 67.65. And so I was looking for holds below that. We ended up kind of fighting that vector quite a bit before we got that breakdown. But that's okay because the analysis was there and the levels ended up hitting to the downside. It was just a little bit of a difficult entry. And so we're pretty far down here right now. I think we technically did tap I think we were one pip off of tapping our floor for our overnight floor. Um, but again, guys, remember, right, we're not going to be paying too much attention to the floor until we get to New York Open and we get revised data to the downside and the upside. But we've had quite a bit of selling volume in general overnight. So I'm imagining our floor is going to expand down further and our ceiling will probably collapse a bit as well. Let's see where our ceiling is at currently. I think it's pretty high up there. The ceiling overnight was really high up. Yeah, look all the way up here at 68.81. So we'll probably see a contraction of the floor and probably a bit more of a move down on the ceiling. But I'm expecting probably some more bearish action today. One of the things I do want to remind you guys of is we do have our consumer sentiment number today at 10 a.m. The reason we do have that number is it's not a like federal government derived number. This comes from the University of Michigan. So it technically is a private number, but this one does come out I think I think monthly. I want to say it comes out more than monthly, but I feel like it comes out a little bit more than monthly. But anyway, we're looking at an estimate of 53 on this one. So if it does come back lower, that'll be, you know, bad. Probably push us down a little bit further. If we do get higher than estimates, we'll have to see what we end up getting. But one of the things I did want to look at before we dove into fractals today to try to find a day trading number was to go into our Thinkorswim and look at our daily vector on ES. One of the things I like doing is looking at daily and weekly vectors um, on ES to inform equity entries in various like stocks and ETFs. And so one of the things I like to do is if we ever do get close to our daily vector, I tend to add in equity into my long-term portfolio. So we still do have a ways down. Our vectors actually remained flat ever since our last buy-in back in towards the beginning of October. But as you guys can see, just a quick tip if you guys are also looking at vector on more long-term frames for like actually investing. I do really like using the daily vector for equity buy-ins. We were talking about this during a couple of our performance reviews in Ascend Premium, and back in our I think it was back in our like August performance review, we talked about this equity buy-in at this tap at 62.40. And then I did do another buy-in, and obviously buying stocks daily, but like these are for larger buy-ins. I did purchase in at the break through this 73 level as well in the beginning of October. So kind of a cool little tip if you guys are like investing or interested in investing. I do like using the daily vector as places to potentially purchase just like a little bit more stock than what you're maybe like doing by standard for like through dollar cost averaging and things like that. So something that has tended to work for me. But yeah, if you guys want to kind of look at that on the daily, it's an interesting little thing. I have historically looked at the weekly as well. Um, and this one just like doesn't tend to play as much as the daily does on just like little buy-ins, especially when you are looking at dollar cost averaging. As you can see, like we rarely get to the weekly, and when we have gotten to the weekly, it's hasn't really been super supportive. So, okay. But we've had a pretty bearish, um, whoops, I don't want the hourly, I want the daily. We've had a pretty bearish week, I would say. If we look back at this a little bit closer, and we can go into our options analyzer and our wave one daily, but we've had a pretty bearish week, honestly. Um, honestly, week and a half. And so whenever we kind of feel that, I kind of like looking at the daily vector to see if there's any opportunity to buy some stock. Okay, let's go look at some levels. So the first thing I do want to say is that I think the levels on Milk's Yellow Box did not play super well last night. If we go back to the linear chart, we had a little bit of a supportive and resistive feel for macro pivot, but it was pretty messy. Like we had these really big wick downs to like my 34 area. Um, Pivot here was pretty much completely disrespected all last night. Yellow box was technically respected. We had that break below on our first opening candle, and we never did break back above before we got the win. So our volatility levels, similar to yesterday, are working pretty well. Um, a lot of the more like order flow levels, though, that Milk puts on his chart haven't really been working super well at this time. So I'm not going to be spending too much time looking at things like macro pivot and pivot for any confluences on our trades. So let's head into fractals. On our wave one daily. So every single candle we're looking at here is a daily candle, and we are still in our bearish cycle. One of the things I want to say is we're getting pretty close to a 20% odds again, which we were really close to our 20% odds when we were coming up here last week when we were looking at our wave one daily. The one thing I want to keep an eye on is we still have this cluster of open states down here. Let's look at these open states, see if I could zoom in as much as possible on these ones. So we have an open state. Let's see here. I think we're trading at like, didn't we trade down to like 12? Yeah, we trade to 67.12. So right now, I think some of these open states are probably a little bit old. Yeah, these ones are old. These should have closed because we did break below them. We'll wait for an update to confirm. Then here's this 67, 12, 22. This is the one that we just created. So we actually did hit those open states that we were looking at last night at that 21 and 29 level. And it doesn't actually really look like we have many open states below that. We have a decent amount of blank space to the downside, which is showing us some potential for a move down today if the market wants to give it to us. But on the flip side of that too, from an analysis perspective, you could argue that because we're past our 50% odds, if we can get ourselves down to this like 66, 72 at our 20%, there might be a potential there for bouncing. But we're not really seeing anything too inspired on the Wave 1 daily, especially because we've closed these open states. Our vector is currently trading at 67, 21, 25 on our Wave 1 daily. So we'll see if any of our smaller time frames give us any more clarity here. But we technically do have some room down on the Wave 1 daily still. Okay, let's see. What do we got next? All right, so for our 7 wave 60, our vector is currently trading at 67.40. One thing I want to note, um, I want to look at our vector position. So our vector has trended pretty well during ETH. This is going all the way back to 3 a.m., 2 a.m. We had a little bit of a revision. Vector traded okay during ETH. We did have a pretty strong break above, a retest on that vector, and a break back below. One of the things I'm going to be looking at while we're doing our analysis this morning is just seeing how our vector levels have played overnight. Because we kind of had that messy vector play right at ETH, I just want to confirm that vector plays are actually going to be respected during RTH. So we can go back and look at some of that history to see um, if we want to trust vector, if it does continue to be in a trend. So that's currently trading at 67.40. We have this open state we just created at 67.12 from that low of day tap. Um, our 10% odds and our 5% odds are looking at 66.77 and 66.61. Um, yeah, Wiki. So I just personally look at like ESZ 25, ESU 25. I always look at the current contract. I'm pretty sure that they're the same. So we can actually go check that real quick. I know a lot of people just use like ESF and GC equals F because that's the ticker that is in um in Yahoo, like if you go just like look at like ES price for today, it usually does like ES equals F. Let's go look. So for example, on our ESZ, we're at 67.40.13, and we have an open state down at 66.67. So look at ESF. So it is still 67.40.13 and 66.67. So the data is the same, which is good, right? And it should be the same. Um, One of the things I will notice is when we get close to contract expiration in our futures contracts, especially these quarterly contracts, I spend a lot of time looking at our volume and open interest being traded during that like week or week and a half of changing from like, U to Z, for example. And so I have gotten into the habit of using the actual contract name, and that's probably more so just so when we are in contract turnover, depending on when I want to flip my contracts, I'll just flip my fractals charts because sometimes, if I'm remembering correctly, I feel like ESF just flips when the contract actually expires. I know some people with like different like prop firms, like I think they just like automatically flip over. But like obviously when you're trading like with your own capital and you can select the contracts, I tend to kind of be pretty picky on when I flip based on volume and open interest. So that's actually a pretty good point. When we get to the end of this quarter, we can kind of look at some volume and open interest during market prep as we get towards that options expiration to determine like when we want to go from ESZ to I think ESM. So that's kind of why I look at the Z. It's a habit. It's a little bit of administration, but I tend to like flip all of these contracts manually. Okay. So 66.67 and 66.61 are two open states on the 7 wave 60. And they are paired with the 5% odds. If we go back to our wave one daily, I believe we did have um 67.51, sorry, 66.72 was something we were looking at. So I was just going to quickly see if the 7 wave had something, but so, 670 is a little bit higher than the 667, but we technically do have these clustered open states on some of our larger time frames from 661 to 670. So I might just go mark that real quick as a big zone, 661 to 670. Um, and we'll see if we can find some clarity within that zone because 10 points is pretty big. We'll see if we can find some clarity in that zone. And I actually like that because look, it does align with our IV walls, which is great. So here's 661, and we'll take this all the way up to 670. I'm just going to take a note too that these are open states on our wave one daily and our 7 wave 60. So I love when we do get this volatility because we tend to get to those like really big time frame open states. OS on wave one daily and 7 wave 60. I believe we have our 5% odds too on the 7 wave 60, which is good. Okay, so we'll mark that as a potential macro level to look at for the day. And that was 66.61 to 66.70. Okay, nice. Look at that. That one for 66.61 has been open for 74 time frames, so 74 hours of market trading. Okay. Look at our 20 May 15. 67.41 is our current vector there. Um, Man, kind of look at this on the 20 wave. See, like I just feel like the vector wasn't completely respected. It was pretty messy. Let's go look. So this was 11/6 at 9 o'clock at night. Um, this was yesterday at 3:15, so that was just at the end of the day. We had like some pretty strong breaks. We didn't really test our vector too much, and we were a little bit messy through here as we had a revision. We've been kind of above and below vector on the 20 wave, so it's just a little messy last night. But in general, we're respecting some of those tests, so I'm not gonna totally write off vector today. But we're currently trading at the 20% odds on the 20 wave. We do have a 10% odds at 66.99. Our 2% odds on the 20 wave 15 are 66, 62, 97. Let's just say 66, 63. And I do really like that because that is in confluence pretty close to that 20% odds that we were looking at on the wave one daily. So I am going to go ahead and mark that at 66, let's say 66, 63. We have an open state on the 20 wave. Oops, wrong one. Let's go build our open state here. So, and our 20 wave 15 is turning out to be a pretty nice level. Seems pretty far away, but we've had some insane volatility these past few days. So I would not be terribly surprised if we get down here. Okay, so that's that. And I'm just going to make a little note here. 66. I think we said 68. Did we say 68? Hang on. Let me double check. 63. 66, 62, 80 is what it has. So we'll do 66, 63. I'm just going to make a little line over here to give us a little bit more density to get us out of this big 10-point range. Okay. So there's that open state. Um, Sean, the DOM data that I'm subscribed to, this is actually this particular page I'm looking at is coming from Apex Trader Funding, but I do pay for level two data and order flow data from the MotiveWave platform as well. So this platform I'm trading on is MotiveWave, and this particular DOM is just like I really like the DOM that MotiveWave gives. I feel like it's really clean, and I like that it gives you the like the cumulative delta on active trading as well. It's really nice. Okay. So we saw the 20 wave 15. Let's go see if the 10 wave 15 has anything good. Okay. 10 wave has been pretty respected for a while. I know I love that percentage because you don't have to play Rain Man every time you're trying to be like, who's in control here? That like really quick delta is so nice. Um, okay, so the 10 wave 15 has respected its vector pretty well, at least from we could probably argue like New York session, or sorry, not New York, Euro session. 6728 is where that vector is currently trading. We're currently at 20% odds. But look at this again, that there's a 2% and a 1% odds hiding behind this 2% at 6666. And we have a open state at 66, 65, 75 on the 10 wave. So let's go mark that because that area is becoming very dense. So let's do 66, 66, 75. I'm going to make another line. 66, 66, 75. Okay. This is going to be a big text box here soon. Let's do and the 10 way 15 minute. Perfect. Ooh, we love when areas stack up like this. This is gonna be nice. Okay. Going into the 7 way 5 minutes, so we're going into our small time frames. Oh, look at this. Really big open state all the way down here. Nice. So let's see what we got here. Oh, look at this. This is interesting. So we're actually above pivot on our 7 way 5 minute on our shorter time frames. So that's good to see. And I do like that because we could see potentially if there's any upside areas for rejection. But we can go back and look at our vectors across everything too and see if there's any good rejection spots there. Um, right now we see our 2% odds at 66.73. But otherwise kind of below this 66.88, 66.92 area on the 7 way 5, we have a lot of blank space. So you notice there's really no clusters down all the way until that 2% odds from 90 to 73, and then down another like 50 points to 66.17. So we're not really seeing any confluence on the 7 way 5 minute with that zone that we marked, which does make sense, right? Because the 7 way 5 minute tends to look at just shorter time frames. And so it's not going to have nearly as large of a range as some of our midterm time frames. Um, the other thing I'll say about this is I don't really see too many additional open states like 66.92, 66.88. Like if we go back to our 10 wave, um, we don't really have any open states on there at that 92 or 88 until we get down to the 66 area. So while the 7 wave 5 minute might have some opportunity for scalping at this 92 to 88 zone, because it's the only zone we've been looking at so far, I'm probably not going to spend too much time looking at it unless, of course, our 50 wave 1 minute has a confluence. Then there could be opportunity for scalps here. But again, guys, like I'm not really much of a scalper. Like my A plus setup is looking for, 15 to 20 point moves. So we will go look at the 50 wave one though and see if there's confluence at that 92 or 88. So the 50 wave 1 minute should also be trading above pivot. I believe it is. Whoa, we're messy here. We're just like right on pivot. Let me zoom in. That's really hard to see. Okay, we're technically below pivot. We're trading like right here. Well, look at this. We don't have like any open states on the 50 wave 1 minute until we get all the way down to 66.16. Let me load a few more days to see if we can get more clarity here. 50 wave 1 minute looks crazy. Wow, we don't have any open states on the 50 wave 1 down until 66.16. That's super interesting. There's plenty of supportive areas on the 50 wave 1 with all these clusters showing over here, but we have that 67.15 open state that we created just, a couple periods ago. But beyond that, like there's really not too much to the downside. I'm gonna try to zoom in on this if we look to the upside here, what's going on. So vector's at 67.21, which is pretty in line with where vector was on our 7 wave 5 minute. I think we were at 67.21 and a half. 10 wave 15 is trading at 67.27. 20 wave is trading at 67.40. So we've got a pretty big range here. Let's go look at our 7 wave 60. 67.39. And then our daily, I think, was trading at like 21, wasn't it? Let's see. Where's this one at? Oh God, 67.17. Look, it's even lower. Mhm. So we have a pretty big range here, I would say, from like 20 to 40 on our vector. Really big range, guys. So I'm not going to be spending too much time trying to look for a vector reject just because we are so spread out currently. Our vector goes anywhere from 67.20 to 67.40. So as we get into market open, we'll see if we can just get a little bit of a reconciliation of our vector clusters to see if we do have opportunities for rejections there. But John and I were just talking about our DOM and where I get this DOM data. So the depth of market is something that I do look at very regularly while we're trading to kind of inform our entries. One of the things I do want to say is we're trading just slightly below 100%, which means on the tape actively, there's just a little bit more sellers than buyers. And so if we can continue to see, good participation with sellers, especially as we get into New York session, I will be looking for vector, for rejection, for continuation down. But I am going to be patient until we get revised options data for our ceiling and our floor. So that's going to be the first thing I look at, especially because last night I did take a loss. I really want to be patient and make sure that the conditions are playing in the way that I want the conditions to be playing for my setups and make sure I have all of my data available to me so that if we do and when we do make a trade, it's a very informed trade with like a very informed stop loss and very, very informed profit targets, guys. So this is a high probability zone that I really like for the day, though. It's all the way down here from 66.70 to 66.61. We do have open states pretty spread out down there for how big our range has been. There might be some opportunity to take this for like a 9 point range, but I'm going to try to be a little bit informed on my entry and just not have such a huge stop loss and just enter right at the top. So, um, we'll see how we go today, guys. We've had pretty good responses to our volatility metrics on Yellow Box, and so, yeah, happy Friday. Um, Trade well if you're trading today. We've had a pretty good week. And so if you guys are feeling like your week is good and you're feeling successful, call it a day. Don't trade today. I'm going to be trading today because I do like having consumer sentiment come out, have a little bit of a boost in what do you call it, in volatility. So I will be kind of participating today. The other thing I do want to say, for those of you not in our premium group, I will actually be trading with Top Step TV today at New York Session Open in their fast markets segment. So if you guys would like to actually come live trade with me, I will be on Top Step TV trading fast markets this morning. I'll let everybody know in our Discord as well. I believe our Discord, like Goose and A Train, will still be trading in live trading chat, but I will be with the Top Step team this morning. So, all right, guys, happy Friday. I will talk to you guys on Monday. I hope everybody has a great weekend and I hope everybody has a great trading day. See ya.